Thank you everybody for being here tonight for my lecture, and thank you to the university, thank you to John, and I'm very happy and pleased to be here. It's the first time I visit Florida, and this is my first exhibition in Florida as well, so I'm very honored to have my work here. So I'm going to start just by giving a little bit of a background about myself and you know how I came to be the artist I am, and making the work I do with the ideas that I present in the work. So hopefully that will help a little bit to understand where I'm coming from. So I'm going to start with people that were really influential in my life, and in this case my mom, Ophelia. She was a seamstress, and she was not political or too very religious. She was Catholic, used to go to church all the time. But what influenced me from her was her sense of justice. She knew what was right or wrong all the time, and there were experiences during my childhood that really left a mark. So I will talk a little bit more about her in a few more slides, but she was one of those important people in my life. Another one is my sister, and I'm sorry, my nanny. My sister's in the next slide. My nanny, Natalia, she's a Nahua Indian, or indigenous woman who spoke the language of the Aztecs, basically, Nahua. And she used to talk to me in Nahua when I was a little kid. As a child, I was studying English already. I went to private school since I was a little kid. And I thought she was speaking English. So I had to talk to her back in English, and she used to laugh out loud. But she was very loving, and it left a very first-hand impression of Native Americans from Mexico, basically. She lived with us, and so this is in my house when I grew up in downtown Mexico City. And that's my sister, Christina, and that was another big influence until today. She came to my lecture in Texas. She lives in Texas. She runs a business in Brownsville and lives in Mexico City, Texas, also in Houston. Sorry. Anyway, so back to my mom. One day my mom came back from work. She was delivering some blouses, so she was a seamstress for blouses. She came home crying, very upset, and this was in 1968. And I was at the time around 14 years old, and I was upset too to see her upset, and I asked her what was wrong, and she witnessed a police shooting dead an 11-year-old child right in front of her. So we both cried at the time, and ever since I've been trying to understand why people is violent against people. So anyway, at the time in Mexico City, if you recall, this is right before the Olympic Games of 1968, there was huge demonstrations. Like 500,000 people going to the streets protesting for different things, either better salaries and living conditions for working people, all the way to university programs that the students wanted to change and have more freedom to choose what they wanted to study and so on. But the whole thing turned out into a very sad ending. This plaza is the famous plaza of the three cultures, because there is a modern architecture, there is pre-Columbian architecture, and colonial architecture. On October 2nd, 1968, in this plaza, there was this peaceful rally, and that rally got massacred by the army in daytime. But it's really hard to know, but several hundred people died, on the hands of the soldiers who were there with military tanks and even run after people when they were trying to escape, and they went into the condominiums that are all around. Some people opened their doors to the students and they broke into the condominiums and they shot the owner of the condominium or the student as well. It was brutal. After that, there was no more demonstrations. The Olympic Games opened quietly. But even then, there was still politics. If you recall these protests of a couple of African American athletes protesting with the Black Panthers face in a gold medal that was taken away from them later. But anyway, so 1968 was a very dramatic year for the whole world. But this is my own upbringing when I first began to expose to these social situations. Another person who influenced my work is my dad. My dad worked as a firefighter. Here he is, he's in the front holding the hose in Mexico City. So he had to work out all the time. He became like a Superman dad. It was really scary to have this father. You didn't want this father to be upset with you or to spank you because you would be at the other end of the room. He almost became a wrestler. I'm glad he didn't. He got a much more interesting job. Not that being a wrestler is anything wrong with, but he got a very interesting job in the Central Bank of Mexico as internal security officer. His job was to catch criminals who were doing forgeries. The central bank in Mexico is the Mint, and they print the money. And my dad's office was a museum of crime. It had forgeries of Mexican pesos, plus etching plates next to the pesos, but not only Mexican currency. There was US dollars, and the plate next to the US dollars. There was European money, like francs, at the time francs, not euros, francs. And the plate next to it, Moroccan money. I remember money from Cuba, from some South American countries, like from Bolivia, from Venezuela, etc. It was just from all over. He had fascinating stories about people that he captured. But he was an artist himself. He was a painter. And this is a photo of my mom that he painted. He overdid it a little bit on the lips, but he used to just have different ways of painting. And he taught me my first lessons in drawing and painting when I was a little bit, because I kept asking him to draw animals for me, to draw different things for me. He got tired of me and said, "You better do it yourself and let me show you how to do it." So he showed me how to sketch and color theory when I was about 7 years old. But then I saw him painting photographs as well, so that was another thing that left a little bit of an influence. But in any case, because my father was an artist and catching forgers, he even befriended forgers in prison, because he had to interview them and ask them why you did what you did. And in this case, this is a famous criminal in Mexico whose name was San Pietro, and it's signed on the side of the photograph. He was a French artist who had it all. And for 10 years, the Mexican police could not arrest him because they didn't know where he was. Finally, his girlfriend, who he left behind in Paris, she contacted the Mexican police and told them where he lived. So they got him. That was a big mistake to leave his girlfriend behind, I think. But anyway, once they arrested him, my dad began to bring art supplies to him. And then, since my father was an artist, he began to talk artist to artist with a forger. And my dad asked him, "Wait, why did you do that? If you are an amazing artist, this portrait, for instance, is just from a little passport photograph that San Pietro did with India ink. So you don't even see brushwork. It's just like a really fine job." But my father asked him, "Why did you do that? You went to the best art schools in France. You came from wealthy families. You had it all." And the artist, San Pietro, said, well, I did it for the thrills. And that was it. He stayed 10 more years in prison and he went back to France. But anyway, so a lot of my work, you're going to see a lot of look-alike things, and this is where it's coming from, basically, my appropriations, where I kind of try to do a forgery of something, but I give it a twist. You're going to see plenty of examples of that. Then I thought I would not make a living as an artist, so I studied anthropology. So these are two friends of mine from the School of Anthropology, Miguel Angel and Sergio. And this was just around 1971. 1971 was another scary year in Mexico. With these friends and other friends, we went to the first demonstration after 1968. That was in June 10 on, let's see, yeah, here is June 10, 1971. So the so-called Corpus Christi massacre. That was another massacre. I almost got killed when I went to this demonstration. I had to run for my life. There were paramilitary groups. I don't know if you have seen this movie, Roma. It's a black and white movie from a Mexican director. There is a scene where there is a demonstration and somebody comes into a store and shoots somebody inside the store. Was this demonstration? So there were paramilitary groups that have bamboo bars. And some of the bamboo bars have actually knives at the end. You don't see those in the picture here. But I was in front of one of those with a knife in front of a bamboo with a knife in front of me. And I just, when I see behind me and most of my students' friends were gone, I just run as fast as I could. And the guy could have killed me. He was only like 10 feet away from me. And I just jumped over a grocery store that had a metallic gate, and the metallic gate was just running down, and I flew and rolled over inside, and then behind me the gate just shut. So that saved my life. And inside there, it was like a liquor store. All the students who were outside were totally terrified and crowded. I remember getting up on top of the counter of the store and scream at everybody to stop screaming because they're gonna know we are here. And everybody got quiet. And I said, why don't we leave 2 at a time and we will be fine. And that's what we did. 2 at a time every 5 or 10 minutes. So it didn't look like if we were a crowd, and I got to stop in the middle of, from there to my house by police. And I told them, I just came out of my classes. I was not in the demonstration. They let me go. But it was a really scary experience. But anyways, this really left a serious imprint in my mind about the world, about how political powers work against anybody's life. Anyway, so I began to do art for community newspapers. Like this one was in Ciudad Nezahualcóyotl, outside of Mexico City, in some of the poorest neighborhoods. I began to get involved in literacy campaigns. So I did, we were a lot of critical of American politics within Mexico. But at the same time, I was being an artist. I wasn't in my art. I wasn't doing politics. I was doing abstraction. When I studied anthropology, I studied eventually political economy too. And I was very much interested in people trying to change the world. It's a history of utopias that collapse and become dystopias. Basically, every revolution in history has that experience. And for that matter, I was interested in constructivism. Constructivism was an art form around the Russian Revolution that wanted artists to integrate art and life. So why do you need to have anything hanging on a wall when the wall itself could be beautiful? That was the concept. And that never happened, thanks to the horrendous politics of what was coming up later with Stalinism. Anyway, so that's enough for my background. That's when I married an American woman in Mexico. We were working in the countryside. In Veracruz, she got really sick from parasites. After 2 years working there, she got amoebas, and she almost died from it. And that's when She was afraid of staying in Mexico, and she wanted to come back to, she was from the Bay Area, from San Rafael. So, so we moved. Either that or we broke up. And at the time I was very much in love with her. So I gave up my job. It was a great job, what I had. And I moved to Berkeley, and with no regrets. I was very happy to be there, because Berkeley at the time was the opposite of Mexico. It was like so open. They have an African American mayor, and still, I think, maybe it's the liberal place that is loved to be hated by the ultra-conservative. But in any case, I had no complaints. But that's my history of how I came here. So I didn't immigrate. I was imported by my wife, or ex-wife now. But anyway, so I'm going to start with my attempts to forgeries. So one of my favorite artists from all times is Francisco Goya. He did a series of etchings after the war with France, when Napoleon decided to invade Spain to liberate Spain from their monarchy. The Spaniards say, no thank you, we don't need liberators, and there was like brutal war between the French and the Spaniards. So this is a series of etchings that he did that are they're the disasters of war. So I began to do this in 1983, when I was still a student at the San Francisco Art Institute. And my first forgery was this one, which I did when Ronald Reagan declared himself a Contra. Contras were the guerrillas who were fighting the Sandinistas, and the US government was seeing Nicaragua as part of the Soviet Union, so like the Cold War. And I went to Nicaragua right after the revolution. People were very hopeful. And I was happy for them. And they were not part of the Soviet Union. They were not part of any conspiracy from the Russians. Or it was a coalition of Marxist and Christian groups and popular groups that eventually collapsed, and eventually, like many revolutions, got corrupted. Like, you know, today it's really a shame that the current president is moving Nicaragua in such a way. But going back in 1983, it's a different story. It's like people have hopes that something good is going to happen, something is about to change. And I was just being critical of the context that I witnessed as just one more intervention of the United States in Latin America, in this case with Nicaragua. So things that I added in my series of the disasters of war were other cultural influences, like in this case, this Disney gas mask that, I don't know if you have seen it, but I think this could be a collectible. I haven't seen one myself, but the scary part is that they could be useful today, which is just like a really scary thought to have. And anyway, so I don't know if you recall when you go to Disney World that you read, "Welcome to the happiest place on earth." So I wanted to mix it with the unhappiest place on earth, which for me is war. So I got the two together with the rubber stamp of the gas mask. So I'm gonna move a little fast through different bodies of work. Just if you have questions, maybe you could ask me later, because I just have too many slides. And but all of these come from that series. You know, these are people saving art from the war, maybe museum keepers or collectors. But in this case, will be the Museum of Modern Art in New York that has the Mademoiselle Avignon. Two of my favorite artists meeting each other, Posada and Goya. They've been introduced by the Catrina, is the skeleton lady that Posada created, in a bull rein that comes from one of Goya's etchings from the Proverbios, which I'm gonna show too. This is a very different series by Goya, from the Caprichos, which almost got censored by the Holy Inquisition in Spain, because they said he was doing a lot of images with witchcraft. And what saved him was actually the king, who said, no, I commissioned those prints. In any case, this is one of my favorite prints from him. The sleep of reason produces monsters. And the only thing is, in this slide, the monsters are not scary. I mean, they're endangered species, if anything, like the owls, even the bats that are really good for agriculture. So I decided to put things that are truly scary, like a military aircraft. And again, same picture. I decided to keep the little owl more like a pet. And this is Jerry Falwell and Jesse Helms on the left. I don't know if you've ever seen the Teletubbies, but okay, so they both were scandalized that there was a Teletubby that apparently was gay. The purple Teletubby. I think it was Inky Winky or something like that. So they're giving themselves a pedicure and they went a little too far with the feet of Inky Winky. So anyway, so I'm gonna go through, this is the boogeyman. This is Fidel Castro dying, but I made this in 1999 and he died like 8 years later, so he took up forever. Poor guy. Anyway, so this is a self-portrait of Goya, which I use as a disclaimer to show that I'm not trying to compete with Goya. The hat is too big for me. So one thing about, I like to satirize everybody, but I also satirize myself, so I don't make exception. Anyway, so another of my influences, this is Lulu, my late cat. This is just about a few weeks before she died. She was the most amazing cat, and here you could see her, she's doing a self-portrait. Anyway, so I love my cats, and I this is herself. She was so dignified, but she was a little devil. She used to bully the other cat, jump all over the house, redecorate the furniture. So she was an artist herself too, redecorating. Anyway, so she made it to my art. My cats find their way. So there she is on the bottom. As a little Develina, on another version of the Sleep of Reason Produces Monsters, in this case with the scary nuclear holocaust. The stereotype of Mexican monster, basically. After Ratfink. Ratfink is, if you're familiar with car culture, it was created by Ed Roth back in the late 50s, 60s. And I grew up with that in Mexico, actually. I have 3D models of Ratfink. So I did a Mexican Ratfink here. And it's sort of like in front of the Holy Inquisition. And this is after one of those caprichos that Goya did. And so on. This one is about the art market with Damien Hirst painting and collectors hiding it, maybe speculating on the art, waiting for it to flip the artwork. Bravissimo, here you recognize Jeff Koons' sculpture. And something that looks like a little bit like a condom on the bottom, but it's another button. I'm sorry, I think I went too fast. Oh yeah. So anyway, this is the new what a tailor can do. And this is about the child abuse in the Catholic Church. I didn't do the image. The only thing I did was put like a priest, what do you call it, priest uniform, and some Mickey Mouse hat on the priest. Anyway, this is another one. I end up putting up Putin and Stalin. Today I would have put a different person instead of Stalin. You might guess who, but anyway, this is they already had seats, and on the bottom I have a guitar with the name of the rock and roll band, the women's group that protested Putin, Pussy Riot. So if you could see it, it's a little far away for people in the back, but it reads Pussy Riot. Anyway, so I'm gonna, again, this is about economic crisis and so on. The stereotypes, getting rid of racism, this KKK chicken, and so on. Anyway, like a virgin here, not the scapula. You will not escape. That's Obama. And a little KKK chicken on the bottom with flames in the back. Here it's being tempted by powers. And what a sacrifice. Again, this is George Krushak, a British satirist that I really like. And I made this headache. With different devils. One could be, the Republican Party, the red, the Democrat Party, too, blue, and the other devils, probably devils that he himself created for himself, with so many things that we could criticize. There's a different series of engravings by Goya. This is from the Proverbios. They tend to be more surrealistic, and many people think that modern art started with Goya because of these engravings. They're very much the beginning of surrealism. But anyways, I decided to use these ones as sources for other critique prints of mine, or critical images. In this case, about surveillance or phones. So probably everything I'm saying is being listened to through my iPhone. So hello everybody there. Anyway, so it's about water. It's about poaching. And about the art market, up and down in prices. This is just little businessmen being played by the women, and a little macho character, macho chicken, being broomed off the picture in the circle. There was a group of characters on a tree. I decided to put a picture of Guatemalan immigrants right outside of a train, the so-called train La Bestia, and I put a little baby that wouldn't. La Bestia was this train full of children that were moving from Guatemala to Texas. And then I'm gonna show you a different body. So this one I just finished, at the time I just finished my undergrad school at the San Francisco Art Institute. And that's around the same time I did my first etching. I decided I didn't want to make art with this work. It's more like an editorial cartoon. So it's an editorial cartooning. To me, I didn't see it as art. I thought nobody would care about this because people who used to like Ronald Reagan would hate this drawing I did, and people who didn't like this drawing, didn't like Ronald Reagan, they would not like to see him in their house, and nobody would care for this. So I decided to look for the cheapest materials, paper and charcoal and pastel. I spent like $10 on it, and this big piece of paper, though, it's 7 feet by 7 feet. And somebody got angry with it, got it torn on the side. The first time I showed it, and it was in the Mission District. And they got angry because they didn't like Ronald Reagan, not because of the drawing or whatever. They just wanted to make a statement. So I decided to make a forgery of the destroyed drawing. And it's hard to see where the vandalism took place on the other one, but you could see it here, maybe. There's a little line going through here. This is a whole torn that goes around. There's another torn on the side that you don't see, but I was happy to be able to forger myself in this case. The second version is in the collection of the San Jose Museum of Art now. So it's ended up in a museum in a way I never even dreamed or expected. This one too, I made this one around the Iran-Contra scandal where President Ronald Reagan didn't remember a lot of the things that were putting him in trouble. And this one is in the collection of Stanford, the Cantor Museum, by the way. It's also 7 feet by 7 feet. The thing is, compared to contemporary Republicans, I think Ronald Reagan was wonderful. I like Ronald Reagan. I would like him to come back, please. Anyway, so more charcoal drawings, like editorial cartoons. It's about how much we depend on fossil fuels for comfort. Now, all these dinosaurs with an icon, the icon is, by the way, I have to clarify, is not Jesus. It's an ideal corrupted. And I'm going to talk more about this in my upcoming works. This one is about Native Americans being displaced from their own land. And it's in the middle of the hand, I don't know if you can read it, but it says English only in the middle finger. So to me, immigration, it's a very interesting topic because as you will see, many of my works deal with it. But as I say in my statement, I think in today's world, everybody has an ancestor that moved from somewhere else, or some of us moved from one place to another. And if you check your DNA, we all come either from Europe or Africa or Asia. And at the end, we're all the same genome. So to me, it's very interesting to see how there is no longer purity in any ethnicity. But I still like to show the irony of who is a foreigner, who is not a foreigner, and everybody could be a foreigner at some point, and everybody could be an alien at some point, and everybody could be from everywhere or from nowhere. But at the end, we are from the place we love, no matter what. So that's, to me, the only passport that everybody has. This is how Cubans come to Florida. I found this really ingenious. This was a GM truck that was made amphibious, and it was moving in with the same engine. And they stopped them outside the coast of Florida, the Coast Guard, and sunk it, unfortunately. So they tried again. I did a tribute to them though, because I thought these people who did that GM truck, they should have been hired by GM, because we're going to need amphibious cars, especially with climate change and weather racing. We're going to need them in San Francisco too, for sure. Anyway, so this is the second attempt. The same people did another car with 13 people inside. The same thing that got stopped by the Coast Guard. And even though there were museums asking for this car, they sunk the car. They would have been great in a museum in Florida somewhere. So I made a little tribute to that one. Don't follow me, I am lost too. Third attempt, three is a charm. They made it with this. So they got in, and the thing is, the car, besides being able to go on the water, could actually drive on the road as well. So I made a painting for them. Cocos Locos, that's a drink in the beach in Mexico with gin and lime, and it's really good. On the left, I put a little comic cartoon. It's a detail. The artists as Native Americans. Anyway, so the other things I like to appropriate and make my own versions, like Andy Warhol. I cannot afford them. So, but you could do your own. You could just buy any regular, like he did. He just put his signature on a regular can. But what I did was my own series. It's called Cannibals instead of Campbells. And I could read for the people in the back, might not be able to read the labels, but the top is artist brains with rights, cream of dealer, art historian alphabet, fundraisers, adobo, museum director stripe, models, meat, anthropologists with noodles, collector's broth, curator's liver, and critic's tongue. It's not vegetarian. Now every single one has a recipe in the back. I'm gonna read you the anthropologist one. So, anthropologist with noodles and your favorite sandwich. A quick and simple meal that's fun to eat. Add a delicious bowl of America's favorite anthropologist noodle soup with lots of yummy noodles to your favorite sandwich. Eating anthropologist is so much fun, you are sure to smile. So another one, I made another set, but this is about 2009, after the collapse of the economy in 2008. And that's, this one is called a Ponzi scheme or pyramid scheme. So it's a Wall Street gumbo, all-American treasury with pork, Freddy mac and cheese, Mergers, acquisitions, and rentals, executive bonus consomme, auction house chili, stimulus minestrone, Ponzi chowder, mortgage brokers stew, and bailout whisk. So we have different versions of different topics with my, here's the George Washington from the dollar bill, but with a little stereotype in the middle. Just to talk a little bit about the contribution that undocumented immigrants bring to the economy. And I'll try to use stereotypes to define the stereotypes somehow. Hopefully nobody gets offended with this. But, this is another version of the dollar bill I have done, the United States of America. It's a federal bailout note. And then on the left, you get an instant update of the public debt. It's connected to a satellite, and I mean, right now it's 22, I think it's maybe 23 trillion by today. And how much per person is $66,000, $943. That's what we owe in this economy. It's called one recession. And then I decided to make money for everybody. This is $1 billion. You're going to be a billionaire, just buy one of my brands. This is $1 billion. The unique states of America. I put Washington as a Wall Street broker, maybe. So it has a lot of details. The back is like in tax loopholes we trust, and so on. Anyway, so I'm going to keep moving to other bodies of work. This is something I call maybe reverse anthropology. This painting, it's the Daniel Boon's daughter abducted, or it's the abduction of Daniel Boon's daughter by the Indians from 1853 by Charles F. Wasmer. His real name is Karl. He's an immigrant from Germany. Karl Wasmer made this painting, where he depicts these very aggressive-looking Native Americans with a young woman who's totally terrified and praying for her life. I decided to make a statement in the opposite direction, because in many people's views, the original Border Patrol were Native Americans who were arresting undocumented immigrants from Europe. The first undocumented immigrants from Europe were the Spaniards and the conquistadors throughout the Americas, the Portuguese, the English, and the French, because they didn't have passports, and they acted against the law of the land of many Native American people. So, so I decided to make this with the stereotype of the Braves or the Patriots. I don't recall the indigenous character. I don't watch sports, so I'm sorry for that. Anyway, so I decided to play that stereotype against the other meaning, which was done also by an immigrant from Germany, Karl Wasmer. Anyway, so this is my most recent version. This one is called Detention as the Border of Language. And I decided to make it even more exotic looking, with even a pyramid in the background instead of a mountain, with all kinds of Native American animals and art. And it's very hard to see, but on the canoe on the side it also says Border Patrol. So this one I just made it this year. I began to do prints like this, given the fact that there's so much xenophobia in politics today, that for the first time in about 40 years I have lived in this country, I feel like a target sometimes. This is a close-up. This is by Ensor. James Ensor is another of my favorite artists. I appropriate a lot of my favorite artists as a forgery will be if I did a forgery. I love James Ensor. This is called Murder. I decided to make this about well, it's an etching with the same image, but this is an indigenous character's head being replaced by a European head. I did a painting of this, which is more clear. And my cats made it into the version of that painting. This is Diego and Frida in my house. The most incredible cats. Anyway, so this is Diego on the right corner. And Demos me tulipan means devils torture me. Anyway, so here it's more clear. You see the head of an Aztec head being replaced by more like a Greek-looking head on the top. George Bingham, this is another of my favorite painters. I decided to make another version of that, but with immigrants from many parts of the world, and everybody's having a party. I decided to put a stereotype of a Mexican bandit, but without the skin, just to show that there is a real human being underneath the stereotypes. The stereotypes are just forever, and that affects every ethnic group: whites, African Americans, Mexicans, everybody. All of us have stereotypes that we deal with, but they are consistently dehumanize us. So I decided to put a real flesh person below, underneath the stereotype, but still happily dancing with their fellow human beings in a fictitious river, but it could be the Rio Grande or the Mississippi River, any river. I did another version of that, which is in the exhibition, the Pastoral or Arcadian State in the Alien's Guide to Greater America. Same idea. It's not in the exhibition. I made this one after I have a bike accident. So there's all this little chicken, featherless chicken running away from the migra on a bicycle, and then one of them falls, goes into the hospital, but escapes again, even though the Lone Ranger and Tonto were watching. Anyway, so this is a close-up of that. So the featherless chicken are speaking art. This one is saying works to suggest that the act finally distills into something dense and unknowable. And that's the title of the print, Illegal Alien's Guide to Critical Theory. So I'm gonna move to one print in the exhibition, and this image is part of a book done by Theodore de Brie, a Belgian artist that traveled throughout the Americas in the late 1500s, and then in Europe, it made two books, one on America and one on Africa, Asia, and Oceania. But the Book of America has images from North America all the way to South America, and they were done later in Europe, so the figures, they don't look indigenous, they look more European, because they were done from notes by the artist and engraved by other people. But this is the way he described women in Brazil, indigenous women from Brazil. It's interesting how the focus of a lot of these anthropological studies are on the violence of the Native Americans, the fact that they were not civilized. For me, that's a stereotype that is born maybe out of the Greek history, when the Greeks decided that everything outside of Greece was barbaric. And that was later translated in the conquest. Everything that Europeans were conquering around the world was barbaric. So I wanted to play the stereotype to the maximum by doing my version. It's called this one's called The President's Xenophobic Nightmare in a Foreign Language. And I decided to put racial stereotypes of as many cultures as I could find, like a Mexican stereotype, Asian, African, Muslim, and so on. But on the top, it's with letter press in gold. It says, "Las mujeres se quedan con las tripas," and the women kept the tribe. Nasty women on the top. But I didn't put that title. That was in the original. If you could see it, it's about "Las mujeres se quedan con las tripas." It's on the top. The type here is the original from the actual book, which was printed in the 1600s or so. Anyway, on the left is Columbus, and on the right is the Border Patrol. Now, I'm going to go to my books, to my codices. This is an indigenous artist that is anonymous, that portrays how indigenous leaders were executed by the Spanish soldiers and priests because they refused to become Catholic or Christianized. And these leaders were executed that way. So this is just a way in which Christianity was used to conquer as an ideology, but also created not only a genocide, but a culturicide. The part of the culturicide was the burning of the books. The books, the Aztec books in Mexico were very much in a library in Mexico City, the library of Texcoco. It had thousands and thousands of books of all kinds that were burned. And you might have heard the stories of the burning of the Alexandrian library many times over. You never hear about the burning of the library of Texcoco, not even in National Geographic. It is really incredible. And there were books that spoke about astrology that were lost. They have a more accurate calendar than the Gregorian in Europe. And they had medicinal books. They knew how to use penicillin, among other things. They had calendaric books, etc. So it was a tragedy. So I decided to make, after that I learned, that history is written by those who conquer wars. And then I decided to begin to play the idea of, using the same imagery of the pre-Columbian books with my work. The iconographic elements of a religious altar on the left, a zompantli, or a skull rack, and the iconographic element of something like Coca-Cola today as a contrast with each other. I began to make books like this. I'm running out of time, but I'm gonna show some enlargement. So this is a book I did with just this is a book I did with just Xerox transfers. So all of this is photocopy transfers on handmade paper, and I use the same language as in the pre-Columbian books, which are not phonetic. It's mostly visual elements that interact with each other, and they could be used as precise as traffic sign that doesn't have words, or signs in an airport, and so on. So anyway, you get the idea how that works. So we're going to continue. And I'm going to move on to one book that gave me a lot of trouble. These are sources that are coming to more pages from that kind of book. This is King Netzahualcoyotl, the one who did the library in Texcoco. He was a poet and a king who was against human sacrifice, among other things. Another thing that you probably never have heard, even in National Geographic. Anyway, so here's encountering Superman. Anyway, so I used elements of popular culture as well. I put them in my books, like in this case. And it creates that kind of interaction of elements. But I'm going to move to this book. This book is called the Misadventures of the Romantic Cannibals. And I got in deep trouble for this. I decided to make a book to criticize the pedophilia in the church, the child abuse, basically, and also the rape of nuns that have happened and apparently has been gone that much. And I decided to use images that show corruption. And to me, one way of showing corruption was by mixing images that were sacred with profane with each other. This is not Jesus, it's a collage. So that's what I'm trying to say. And I'm using it in a way to describe that the sacred beliefs, the great beliefs were betrayed by the institution. Because I respect people's beliefs. My family is all Catholic, and sometimes I go to church with them, and I'm not religious myself. But this one in particular got me in trouble. This made it to Fox News. And there is no nudity, but they put this part, they put it fuzzy, like something was really happening. And say, to hate me more, they say, Stanford professor portrays Jesus having oral sex. So, again, they never called me to explain my work. Again, this is not Jesus, it's a collage that shows corruption of the spirituality in my view. This is a portrait of Jesus from Persian manuscript. So the same thing. Anyway, so once that made it to Fox News, I got so much hate mail. It got really scary. People went in a picket line because it was in an exhibition in Colorado, and there was a lady who saw the news from Montana, who drove her 18-wheeler. She was a truck driver, all the way from Montana to Colorado to the museum in Loveland. It's the Loveland Museum. And she got into the artwork and destroyed the work. And I guess nobody told this lady that this was a print. It was not an original work, it's a multiple. It's one of 40, and the only thing she did was to make the other 39 copies more expensive. So she got a crowbar. With a crowbar, just destroyed the plexi, got inside and and she became an instant heroine of the Tea Party, who paid for her fee because that was a felony. And then a pastor from the place defended my work because he asked me what did I meant with my book, because his congregation, he was from the Resurrection Fellowship, an evangelist, one of the biggest evangelists in Loveland. And he asked me what did I meant by my work, and I explained to him what I explained to you. I say that's just my way to present corruption in the Catholic Church. It's not against the beliefs of anybody. I respect that, but what I don't respect is how that is corrupted and used for abuse. He agreed with me, and he said, yes, that's fine, I'm not joining the picket line. He got in trouble with his own congregation, people quit, they put his house online, invited people to go to attack his house. It got really scary for both of us. He has to have a detail to protect him. I have to talk to the police at the university, to my neighbors. I had to put a security system. But eventually the same group that was boycotting us went to Washington for another exhibition of gay and lesbian transsexual art at the Smithsonian. This is 2010. And they forgot about us because the Smithsonian is a bigger fish than Loveland Museum. So they forgot about us, and the pastor and I became good friends. And then he asked me, after everything was calmed down, would you do a painting of Jesus for my church? And I thought, I don't know. I said, I'm not religious. But, he risked his life for defending my work. But if your congregation accepts a painting from me, sure, I will do it, and I will do it for free. But I told him, but nobody knows how Jesus looked like. And I told him, look at all the portraits of Jesus. I mean, you have the Korean on the upper left, Russian, and so on, Haitian, Native American, Hungarian with red hair, another Mexican by cicadas, Filipino, and so on. It's like, look at the Chinese, looks like Chinese, the Japanese baby Jesus, and the European American, which is most commonly known here, and Mexican Indian looks like an indigenous artist. So I said, the first portrayals of Jesus were doing like 200s after, and it was not Jesus, it was a pastor with sheep in rocks, in rock art. But anyway, but I say, I'll do it anyway. And then he read my email to his congregation, and they accepted with a standing ovation. They said, yes. So I had to do it. So I did it. This is the painting I did. I decided to to put the word love on the banner, used to remind people that Jesus was about love, not about hate. And I thought, but they might not like it because it sounds like a political statement. They don't want that maybe in the church. But they loved it. They say, yeah, there's a passage in the Bible that says Jesus had the banner of love over humanity. And I thought, oh, great. So he guided my brushes. So I thought that was the end of the story. But it developed a little more. They invited me to go there for an opening, and that scared me. I didn't want to go. Because Colorado is where, I mean, they kill people for less. And they have Columbine, they have that massacre in a theater, in a movie, a Batman movie for nothing. Now, a pastor that offended his congregation and a non-religious artist who offended a lot of people who misread his work, the killer is going to have a two-first in there. So I didn't want to go, but I went. I was really, really scared, but I went. Nothing happened. It was the most wonderful experience I had in my life. Nobody tried to convert me. Nobody talked to me about God or Jesus. They just wanted me to meet the congregation. I met the pastors, their families, their children, everybody, and it was beautiful. I talked to the congregation. I thanked them for being open-minded about what I did. And so until today, we're really good friends. Now, the museum itself, the Loveland Museum, got so much money donated because the director stood her grounds. And she got support from the museum constituency to the point that she got a lot of money to open a printmaking facility in the museum. So everybody was happy. Then the hate mail stopped, and I only had love mail after that. So far, so good. Well, I just want to finish my talk by just passing for the rest of the slides. I didn't have time to talk, but at least you will have a chance to see some samples of my work. So other codices that are representing walls, like borders, where people cannot see each other because the wall is blocking them or they are too much under the ground and so on. Sometimes I have paintings of that, appropriations, and so on. This one is where I get my sources of stereotypes. It was a comic book I found in the flea market, and I decided to put myself in the middle of the stereotype again to show that there's a human being behind the stereotype. But it ended up being like my DNA. I did research for my DNA, and they first told me I was like 38% Native American. Now in an update, I am 51% Native American, 38% of Southern Spain. The other 21% is like Jewish, Arab, Northern African, Central African, Southern Asian, and Eastern Asian. So at the end, it was more like a self-portrait of my DNA. Now, if I have all these genes in my blood and they live in peace with each other, sometimes I think people should be in peace with each other. If my genes could live in peace with each other, there is no reason why we couldn't as human beings. So I made several versions of that. Another one, and prints, and so on. But I use the same stereotypes in different shapes. It's a very thick oil paint on top. This is from this year. So I'm approaching the end of the presentation. Applications that I do with iPad. That's after Edward Curtis. I've explained with this that I appropriate. Goya, which is here, one of my favorite. In Goya's original, the witches are kind of like bad girls. They're scaring the hell out of these two guys, but here they are saving the two characters on the bottom from a bomb, and so on. There's some details. This is a glass eye. If you pay attention to the painting, little glass eye in one of the corners. And I'm sorry if you don't like to see hemorrhoids painted, but I'm gonna go quickly through that. Other influences. This is billionaires and millionaires, something gold. And this is called aliens. That gave idea to my friend. This has glass eyes. And then this one is that everybody's an alienígeno, which gives the title to the thing. Anyway, so this is about the hurricanes. And these are my latest paintings. I'm showing this in an exhibition at Stanford right now, with eyes on the corners, with Snow White. I decided I'm tired of painting him, so I decided to replace him for Donald Duck. And he's going to be watching Fox News right there. I haven't painted the television set yet. Finally, the little kids that I just painted too. This one's from a series of paintings that are going to be the 7 deadly sins. And I'm going to end with hoping that at the end, the best of people comes out in circumstances where, there's almost polarization, but that's the little painting in the exhibition here. For me, it was a moment of hope at some point, and I don't want to talk too much about this, but I just want to say, to finish, 2 examples that made me a lot of hope. One was, there was in Texas, an attack on a mosque a few years ago in Victoria, Texas, where the mosque was burnt, it exploded. And in the same town, the synagogue, the local synagogue, opened their doors to the mosque to worship. I thought that was really beautiful. But about a month later, near St. Louis, a Jewish cemetery got vandalized. And the same Muslim group that was in Texas decided to make a fundraising for the Jewish community in St. Louis. And they raised more money than they had, and they gave all the money to the Jewish community in St. Louis to rebuild the tombstones in the cemetery. So it really shows that people could really come together at some point under the worst circumstances. Or at the border, there was this artist who did the seesaw on both sides of the border. I don't know if you saw it, but Ronald Ryle, he's going to come to talk to Stanford soon. But he's an architect, and he found that people could smile and laugh at both sides of the border. So at the end, borders are more in our minds than in real life. But if anything, that's something that I realize gives me hope. And I hope I could convey that to you. Thank you so much for such a